Funding for Colores was provided in part by and viewers like you. This time on Colores. After 50 years, New Mexico-Vietnam veterans share poignant experiences and reflections on the war.
Some people find their God in war. It didn't happen for me. I lost mine.
50 years or close to it. It's still like it happened yesterday. And it doesn't go away.
And a lot of times I would be the last person they would see alive. And so that's why I wanted to be there for them and let them know that I was there with them and they weren't dying alone.
It's all ahead on Colores.
I'm just sitting there in the cockpit. I'm thinking, Jesus, I've only got 12 days left. I could have refused the mission, but that just wasn't me. I was still at Our Lady of Fatima School, in elementary school, and I saw my first helicopter. And I started dreaming about helicopters. In high school at St. Pius, I got my first ride in a helicopter. And I was sold, and I said, I am going to go into the Army, and I'm going to be a helicopter pilot. A captain came running out of the bunker and saying, we've got a bad situation, can you do some medevacs? And, I had the General ship, shiny, brand new Huey, just beautiful, and I said, sure, heck yeah, where is it, And the problem was that the battle was still going on, and they were still getting casualties, they were still getting KIAs, and the battle was moving. So we didn't know exactly where to land in this bamboo forest. We could only see the trail. I looked at the bamboo and stuff, and I looked at the blades, and I said, well, if I can keep that tail rotor in the middle of that trail, and if I don't turn the aircraft more than 10 or 15 degrees as I'm getting down into that trail, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see if those blades will hack off that bamboo like a lawnmower. And boy, it did, but it was noisy and it was scary. And it looked like a power mower on your grass. There was just stuff flying everywhere. And I started getting concerned about debris hitting the tail rotor, or the engine air inlets getting clogged up with bamboo, because then we'd have compressor stall, engine failure. But I said, if I can do this once, I can come back and land in the same spot. It didn't work. We went in 5 more times, and each time we had to cut through the bamboo because we were following the battle, the wounded, and stuff like that. You could hear rifles firing, you could hear machine gun, you could hear people yelling, even though the helicopter was running and you had a helmet on. I mean, there was an amazing amount of noise. They told me that, hey, we're taking rounds back here. These people are being shot as they're getting on the aircraft. And I'm looking around, I'm hearing all this gunfire and stuff and just waiting, really, to get one. They got the wounded and they got them on board. And then I get back to the camp and we got to go back at least 5 more times, and I'm going, Christ, I could put about maybe 12 to 14 on each time. But each time we went out of there, we were over max gross weight limitations, and we knew it. The big thing was, the last time out of that LZ, I had 22 people on the aircraft. because we couldn't leave 5 or 6 there. They'd have been taken out. And so we overloaded the aircraft. Fortunately, we were getting pretty low on fuel, so that weight was going away. And it flew. It was noisy. I mean, the blades were whistling, and when we shut down and looked at those blades, I just could not believe it. But again, I have no clue why I was not shot and why the aircraft was not disabled. They could have done it. They absolutely could have done it. And same thing with Jack. We got back and we just, even to this day, we just go, huh? I'll tell you one thing, Jan, without your letters arriving most every day, or in bunches, I would certainly have lost my mind long ago. Without your unsurpassed loyalty and infinite love, I would be nothing but a mere vegetable. I left Vietnam, and I left Vietnam there, and got back here to Albuquerque, and I came through the doors, and there was my wife and daughter. And still to this day, you think about it every day, but I just didn't have the problems. Yeah, I was patriotic, and I thought it was a good thing we were doing, but my second year was totally different. I came to the conclusion that we need to get out of here and let these people settle this among themselves. And I don't think we were going to win that war. You know, I really saw no advancement in the cause. I saw too many people dying. I saw too much going on in the United States that was disturbing. I never felt betrayed by people back here that were doing the marches and the riots and the stuff. I didn't have any animosity toward them, and I still don't. A lot of people came back and said, oh, the only welcome I got back from Vietnam was being called a baby killer and getting spit on. That never happened to me. Everybody was glad to see me home. Well, honey, I'll sign off now. I want you to know that I know I could never, ever have had a better wife and daughter than I have. I love you, Jan, more than ever. Your man, Tom.
To see a life pass out of these vibrant, young men. It was an honor to be there to be able to hold them. And a lot of times I would be the last person they would see alive. And so that's why I wanted to be there for them and let them know that I was there with them and they weren't dying alone. And we just kept on trucking, kept on working. There's plenty more people to take care of it. And they didn't stop coming. This one night, there was a huge push of mass casualties coming in. And I went to the emergency room to help them, and I said, what do you need? And they said, go in the back and get some more supplies, bandages and what have you. So I went back there. I've never forgotten this young man on a gurney. He looked like he was sleeping. And I went over to him, and he had obviously just died because he was still warm. And he had been pushed in the back because they knew they couldn't save him. When I didn't know what to do other than to pick him up, hold him, you know, for his mother or his family back home. And his whole backside was just, it was just mush. And it was so, to see him lying there so peacefully, those are sort of the incredible things that happen. There's no way anything could prepare you for that. I'd been through all the mass casualty courses, but there's nothing that could prepare you for that. And why that particular young man at that time, I do not know, but his face came back to me, and still does periodically. Somehow we got a hold of a television. You would see the protesters and all the people burning flags and their draft cards and blaming the soldiers. They were totally misinformed. Instead of blaming the politicians, they blamed all of us who were over there, to include the women. You were all lumped in one pot as baby killers and not doing right by the Vietnamese. It was very hard to reconcile that. I finally just had to turn the television off and concentrate on taking care of the soldiers. One day on the ward, I was sitting behind the desk making out the schedule, and the desks were very high, mainly to prevent shrapnel in case you did get a direct hit. And I saw the screen door open, so I waited, thinking somebody would come up to the desk. And I waited. No one came, so finally my curiosity got the best of me, and I got up and looked around, and here's this little weensy baby. She's about, I don't know, not bigger than a grasshopper, but she had a candy bar in one hand and ice cream in another. The chief nurse had named her Mona, and I'd just gotten back from burying my mom. And this little waif comes in, and I think, kid, you need me, and I sure need you. I adored my mom, and when she died so suddenly, I was very, I didn't care whether I lived or died when I got back over there. So Mona, in a way, saved my life. And I did bring her home with me, but it was not easy. It took a lot of coordination. At least I was able to save one child's life.
What do? No, your life is totally up to someone else. You're not in charge anymore. You're in charge. Uncle Sam now is in charge. So I was sitting one day in a guard shack, just talking to the guard, when this screaming came from this man on a moped. Help me, help me, help me. So he pulls up there, and I look, and on his back is his daughter hanging on to him. And she had hit a booby trap that was a white phosphorus grenade. And that white phosphorus will burn right through you, a piece of skin. And so I ran over to pick her up and get her off the bike, hollered at the medevac to get started, and the corpsman came over with the stretcher. So as we lifted her off to put her on the stretcher, all the skin came off of her arm, and it was in my hand, and all I could see was the bone of her what was left of her arm. Of course, she was in shock. Her eyes were this big. She wasn't screaming or crying because she was in shock. So then the corpsman helped me lift her and put her and then as we did it, the skin on her back came off in her hands. The corpsman dropped down and started puking. And I started trying to get her comfortable, and then we got her to the helicopter and let her, well, they'd often do this, let her father go with her, because he'd get down to Saigon somewhere to the hospital, never find somebody, so they let the family members go. Never heard if she lived or died, but, my point was, you forget about the civilian casualties in wartime, and they're gruesome, usually, much more so than soldiers' wounds, because they're generally not treated, they're generally not expected, they don't have the protective equipment. And so here is a perfect example, of a young girl, didn't do anything to anybody, but she certainly probably died, or if not, she suffered the rest of her life from massive scars and stuff. So that was very memorable. Something you never forget, never goes away. I think coming back wasn't difficult, wasn't hard until you actually got back. I got married within a month after I got back from Vietnam. So I was at one of my wife's parties, before the wedding, and this lady looked up at me and, small talk, said, "My, you really have a tan. Have you been in Florida?" And I says, I just, nonchalant. I said, "Oh no, Vietnam." And the look on her face was like, she didn't know what to do, but she could tell, it wasn't like today, "Well, thank you for your service." No, it was like, "Oh my God, what is this person?" She immediately skedaddled off and got off, and left me standing there. But I could tell that there was some degree, I don't know if it was fear or she didn't know what to say to somebody that had been in a combat zone, I just found it awfully strange, but very noticeable, that people didn't, I think that the attitude then was the people that weren't protesting, the rest of the people were just sort of, well, if we ignore it long enough, it'll go away.
50 years or close to it. It's still like it happened yesterday. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. You see the sampans fishing, the whole family. They have their chickens and pigs and everything there with them. And at night they'd set up their M50s, start firing. Once they fire once, we pretty much blew them off the water. Sometimes you see feathers the next morning and all over the water and other things. If you're firing at them, they can very well fire back at you. So you're like a sitting duck, really, on a pond. You didn't know from which angle they're going to shoot at you. You don't know if you're going to survive it. When I came out, we flew into San Francisco. You get so much money to get your plane back to Albuquerque. And so I was there getting my ticket, and they were calling us baby killers and mama killers, and we just kind of ignored them. But one of them just came up front, and I don't know if he's because I was the shortest or what, but spit at me, and I was going to go after him, but I figured it's not worth it. I just wanted to come home. It was just depressing in a way that they would feel that way about somebody who was actually fighting for their freedom. And I feel that I did my job. I just couldn't do it anymore. I had seen enough. I was glad to be home in a way, but by the same token, I felt lost. I think what was troubling me was coming back alive, surviving the war. Knowing how many of us didn't make it back. So you kind of feel a guilt, Why is it, we lost so many, but yet I was able to come home. course, I think like anybody else, I think we prayed every day. Every time the general chorus came on, that was an alarm. We could survive this one, and maybe not. You just gotta hold on to your family and try to make the best out of it, and without really telling them much either, So, and of course, the nightmares, they're pretty intense, and sometimes I'd have dreams about what we saw on the water. Sometimes you see body parts and stuff like that, and it just comes back to you. I don't care how strong of a person you are, how strong of a mind you have. When you see that stuff, it sticks to you, and it doesn't go away.
Some people find their God in war. That didn't happen for me. I lost mine. How could you see such carnage, such awful things, and think there was a reason for that? And I was scared to come back. I was afraid. I was really tired. I was really depleted. And, the thought just kept going through my head, I'll never fit in again. And I really didn't. I tried, but I didn't. I didn't tell anybody I'd been in. I thought they would know that my patients died, and they wouldn't like me for that. I was really isolated. I guess that's what I felt, isolated. I don't tell many people this. I had thought of suicide a lot. And I had a nurse on the ward I was working at, and she killed herself. And I thought, oh my God, she actually went through it. And I could too. And I wasn't quite ready to do that. So I was living in Denver. I bought a backpack and a tent, and I went backpacking by myself up to a place called Lake Dorothy. And I spent 3 days and 2 nights up there, and it was complete solitude. And that's when I decided not to be a nurse and to become a dentist. But the thing that happened is nature came into my life. There was just something healing about it. It could hold the grief I had. It could hold the faces. I had a patient who came in and said that Glenda Goodacre was going to be doing the statue and that I should call her and see if I could watch while she did it. And I thought, oh, sure, right. But I gave her a call, and she said, sure, come on Fridays, I'm here. And I went every Friday for months. When I walked in and saw La Maquette the first time, I just turned around and walked out. I couldn't even talk. And she said she thought I hated it. But then I came back, and I kept coming back like a bad penny. And she was working on just some finishing touches, and she said, Dottie, I think these sandbags need some work. And so I worked on them for a couple of hours. I didn't know what I was doing. And then I realized later that she had just done that so that I would have contact with the clay. And I asked her how long it took her to get him back in shape. And she said, just an hour or two. It wasn't too bad. Being at the dedication was really healing. It's the only word I can have for it. And it was filled with women who had served in Vietnam. And I think that helped with that feeling of aloneness, that there were that many of us there. And the ladies, who I feel like are my ladies, I feel real intimate with them. They were so adorned. It was really neat. It was so nice. They had roses, and it was pretty special. I can't describe it, but it was good. Oh, that was probably really hugely instrumental in my healing, because that's what made me really talk about Nam. And then walking down the street with all those people saying thank you. It was hard for me because the patients that I remember are the ones that died. And so people were always saying thank you, and I'd think, thank her, don't thank me, my patients died. But it took me a long time. And then I realized that they didn't all die. You know, some of them lived. And then this year, the weirdest thing, I got a call from a guy who had somehow tracked me down. He was one of my patients on the first ward. He lived. He's had a great life. It was pretty surprising.
Next week on Colores. The New Mexico Christmas bird count is part of a century-old tradition where bird-loving volunteers provide critical data about bird populations in the Americas.
Birds indicate sort of the health of a system, so the diversity of birds that you might be seeing in a place could tell you how healthy that ecosystem is.
The elaborately painted skateboard designs of Ben Thompson and Johnny Scott prove dreams do come true. Feel the passion that goes into organizing the annual Christmas Gala, performed by the Florida Southern College Department of Music.
From day one, we get this piece, and it's, we're trying to play through it with sight reading it. It doesn't sound that great. And then we get to all the rehearsals and work really hard in the final performance. Just with the audience and everything else, something magical just happens, and it's a really great feeling.
Chocolatier Annie Rupani creates morsels of happiness. She is inspired to find new flavors using chocolate. Until next time, thank you for watching. Funding for Colores was provided in part by and viewers like you.